Hello, welcome to the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame induction ceremony honoring Kathleen Falk. I'm Patty Dreyer, president of the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame Foundation, and I'll be your MC today. We have pre-recorded some parts of this event, but will also host a live interview with our inductee as a special guest. I'm located in Stevens Point and in the heart of Wisconsin, at the Schmeeckley Reserve Visitor Center on the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point campus. We're pleased to have you join us today and are grateful for the technology and the computer technologists who helped to bring us together today. After this induction ceremony, I think you will agree that Kathleen Falk is an extraordinary conservationist. I think you'll also agree that few women have made more significant contributions to our state's conservation heritage than she has. From her performance as a third-year law student winning a seminal environmental case before the Wisconsin Supreme Court, to her role as Assistant Attorney General in Wisconsin, tasked with protecting our state's natural resources, to her leadership as elected county executive of Dane County, where she helped to create the Dane County Conservation Fund, which has resulted in the preservation of over 10,000 acres of land. Kathleen Falk's whole life has been dedicated to conservation achievements. Over the years, in roles non-traditional to women, Kathleen demonstrated what public service with an environmental ethic looks like. It is my honor to celebrate Kathleen Falk today. Let's get started by thanking our event sponsors for making this program possible today. The gold sponsors include Yeager Mellerop Family Charitable Trust and Secura Insurance Companies. Our silver sponsors include Community Foundation for the Fox Valley Region, Tom Dawson, a donation in recognition of Wisconsin's youth conservation leaders, Gathering Waters, Northeast Wisconsin Land Trust, Jerry and Marilyn Knuth via Thrivent Choice, and Wisconsin Society for Ornithology. The bronze sponsors today include Julia M. Boltz, Stephen Bourne, DeWitt Law Firm, Christine Euclid and Doug Steege, Joanne M. and Richard C. Hemp, Peter McKeever, Peter A. and Sharon A. Peshek, Sierra Club Wisconsin Chapter, Wildlife Society Wisconsin Chapter, and the Wisconsin Wildlife Federation. In-kind contributions come from the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point. Let me share how this event will flow. We will feature two wonderful speakers sharing the highlights of Kathleen's life and career. We will present Kathleen with an official recognition from the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame Foundation and an official legislative citation from the state of Wisconsin. Then I will conduct a live interview with Kathleen. This will give you a chance to hear her personally share her story. We will close the event with a video montage from the opening of the ceremony. We knew you'd want to watch it again. We will turn on the live chat feature at that time so attendees, you here today at this induction ceremony, may share thoughts and memories and gratitudes with Kathleen. This is our way to host a reception line so that you can offer your personal congratulations. We will record those thoughts from you and send them in a written document, a written package to Kathleen so that she won't miss any of them. Are you ready? Let's get started by sharing some background about the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame and the induction process.
The Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame Foundation was created in 1984. to encourage the growth and practice of a conservation ethic as a legacy for the people of Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame is a nonprofit organization guided by a board of directors. Voting member organizations represent more than 30 conservation organizations from around Wisconsin. Each year, the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame inducts up to 3 people into the Hall of Fame. To date, there are over 100 inductees who have been honored. You can learn about each of these conservation champions on the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame website or by visiting the Hall of Fame Gallery. The Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame Gallery of Inductees is located in beautiful Schmeeckley Reserve, which is a natural area on the campus of the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, with 5 miles of nature trails and wildlife viewing opportunities. Inside the Schmeeckley Reserve Visitor Center, guests can view engraved wooden plaques about inductees, with quotes highlighting their contributions. A touchscreen computer gives visitors a chance to connect with Wisconsin's conservation heritage as they browse the stories and learn about the achievements of each inductee. Any person or organization can nominate someone for induction into the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame. Nominees have an array of environmental and conservation-related backgrounds and varying types of education and experience. From writers to artists, from educators to policymakers, from researchers to managers, Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame heroes come from all backgrounds and walks of life. Based on standards and criteria set by the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame Board of Directors, all inductees must have significant ties to Wisconsin, and their contributions must have wide-reaching impact, affecting a range of natural resources. Each summer, a 5-member Board of Governors reviews nominations. The highly esteemed governors are an independent body and have in-depth knowledge of Wisconsin's conservation history. The governors select 5 nominations to forward to the Board of Directors and voting member organizations for their consideration. The board members and organization representatives select the following year's inductees from that list of finalists at their annual fall meeting. While voting membership in the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame is only open to organizational members of the foundation, individuals may participate in the mission by providing annual support as affiliate members. The financial support of member organizations and affiliate members allows the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame to celebrate, advance, and share Wisconsin's conservation legacy as it hosts induction ceremonies and maintains inductee archives. We invite you to learn more about the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame and Wisconsin's conservation heritage by visiting our website at wchf.org.
Now I'd like to introduce our first speaker to share the story of Kathleen Falk. This person is Christine Euclid. Christine is a longtime friend and former executive assistant to Kathleen Falk when Kathleen was Dane County executive. Christine is currently a board member of the Natural Resources Foundation of Wisconsin. Christine was formerly vice chair of Gathering Waters, a board member of Thousand Friends of Wisconsin, a board member of the Dane County Natural Heritage Foundation, predecessor of Groundswell, and a member of the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission.
Thank you, Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame, for recognizing Kathleen Falk's lifetime of commitment to the environment. And thank you, Kathleen, for choosing me to make these comments. I am honored. Many people enthusiastically supported Kathleen's selection. I intend to share some of their comments in my remarks today, and I apologize to those I leave out because there just isn't enough time. I didn't really get to know Kathleen until about 20 years after I first met her at the UW-Madison Law School in 1975. At that time, in the late 90s, I was persuaded by Arlen Christensen, another of tonight's honorees, to leave my law practice and join Kathleen's staff in the Dane County Executive's Office. I've been asked today to speak about Kathleen's professional career. Kathleen began her career as a general counsel at a fledgling environmental organization called Wisconsin Environmental Decade, now Clean Wisconsin. She worked there for several years, and then she became an assistant attorney general, where she worked for 14 years and served as one of Wisconsin's public interveners addressing environmental matters. And in 1997, she was the first woman elected Dane County executive, and she was reelected 3 times. From there, she became the Regional 5 Director for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And last but certainly not least, she has been teaching in the recent years. There are many ways one could highlight how deserving Kathleen is of this recognition. I've chosen to focus on 2 aspects of her long and varied career: her precedent-setting work and her people-focused approach. We'll start with her precedent-setting work. Kathleen didn't just do amazing things to help the environment. She often blazed new trails, setting far-reaching precedent with her work. Just a few examples. Wisconsin Environmental Decade versus Public Service Commission, a seminal case in which the Wisconsin Supreme Court held that the Wisconsin Environmental Policy Act was to be applied broadly, and that agencies needed to consider long-term and indirect environmental impacts when making decisions. Kathleen argued this case when she was less than 3 months out of law school. The decision has been cited many times in Wisconsin and elsewhere. So let's stop for a moment and think of how many agency decisions received a far more adequate environmental review, at least in part because of Kathleen's successful work on this case. Another precedent-setting effort of hers was the Wisconsin modern mining legislation. As public intervener, Kathleen spent years working to achieve a better mining law to help protect northern Wisconsin. Many still recall today how Kathleen's tireless work contributed to getting this model legislation in place. Brown County Circuit Court Judge Donald Zeidmuller, then an attorney working with towns concerned about the potential impacts of mining, put it this way: Kathleen Falk's efforts are directly responsible for the model law that was enacted. Another example of her precedent-setting work is the novel Highway 12 agreement. After carefully considering whether litigation to try to stop the Highway 12 expansion project had much likelihood of success, and concluding that it did not, Kathleen, then county executive, made the difficult decision to focus on securing as many positive environmental benefits from the project as possible. After intense negotiations led by Kathleen, an agreement was reached that ultimately resulted in permanently preserving over 7,000 acres of exceptional wildlife habitat in the Baraboo Hills, and provided assistance for affected local governments to help preserve farmland. Yet another example of Kathleen's precedent-setting work is the historic 1998 Dane County Conservation Fund. This fund was proposed by Kathleen during her first term as county executive. The $30 million fund is the largest, most expansive local conservation funding effort ever undertaken in Wisconsin. Over 10,000 acres of prime habitat have been permanently preserved by the Dane County program, and the program is still going strong today. So if you're a user of Dane County parks, bike paths, trout streams, there's a good chance that they exist at least in part due to the historic conservation fund that Kathleen conceived and championed. And an additional note, Kathleen could have just put money in the budget for this effort. It would have been far less work, but she didn't choose that route. Instead, she strategically chose a referendum route, which passed by an impressive 76% voting in favor, which is particularly remarkable given that land use was an especially hot button issue at that time. She did so because she wanted solid backing for the program so that it would have longevity. Steve Bourne, another recent Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Famer, and fishing buddy of Kathleen's, added this observation: "It's the scope of the fund which gives it lasting impact. The conservation community has often been fragmented, so-called tree huggers on one side and so-called hook and bullet crowd on the other side. Kathleen was able to bridge this gap. No surprise, because she is an assertive environmentalist and ardent fisher and hunter herself. Her leadership was masterful, and the program is a model for similar conservation efforts in Wisconsin and beyond." Now, another aspect of Kathleen's work that deserves recognition is her people-focused approach. Throughout her career, Kathleen demonstrated over and over again her deep understanding of how important it is to focus on people in order to make lasting change. I want to share a little story to emphasize this point. I learned many things while working with Kathleen in the county exec's office, but this lesson is perhaps one of the most important. One of my responsibilities was to sort through her many speaking requests and help Kathleen decide which to accept when there were conflicts. Early in my tenure, when I didn't yet know Kathleen very well, I made the mistake of assuming she would want to appear at an environmental event rather than a realtor developer event. I'll always remember Kathleen's response: "I love my environmental friends, but they're already in the choir. I can have more impact by speaking to the realtors and developers when given a chance." One indication of Kathleen's people-focused approach is her skill as a coalition builder. Peter Peshek, a colleague, good friend, and duck hunting buddy of Kathleen's, sums it up this way: "Perhaps Kathleen's finest and most admirable quality is her ability to bring people together around a common goal." Her work on the Flint water crisis is another example of Kathleen's coalition building skills, and one that allowed her to put her public intervener advocacy skills and her county executive management skills both to good work. As the lead federal government official on the site, Kathleen used her inclusive and collaborative style to get key elected officials and community leaders working together to address Flint's drinking problems. Another example of her people-focused approach is how she inspires the next generation of environmental leaders as a teacher and a mentor. She has been and still is much sought after for her teaching skills. In her classes at UW-Madison, Stanford, and Vermont Law School, she teaches how to advance environmental values, not just talk about them. She has her students work together on real-world problems. And as Jordy Jordahl, a friend of Kathleen's and a son of another Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Famer, Bud Jordahl, noted, Kathleen's work bridges the generations, ranging from the founders of the modern environmental movement, many of whom are in the Conservation Hall of Fame, to the present and the future with her work to engage and inspire students. And by the way, Kathleen was part of the Jordahl family's deer hunting crew. Kathleen is also a great mentor. We'll never know the extent of how many future environmental leaders, young women in particular, Kathleen has inspired. Here are accolades from just one. Vicki Elkin, Executive Director of the Fund for Lake Michigan, had this to say: "Because of Kathleen Falk's mentorship of many in the conservation field, her legacy extends well beyond her impressive achievements." So in conclusion, with apologies to Kermit the Frog and Jim Henson, many of us know it's not easy being green, but it should also be recognized that it's not easy being the first or one of the onlys. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, Kathleen was one of the only women in Wisconsin regularly appearing in the courtroom and in the Capitol fighting for the environment. She still is the only woman ever elected Dane County executive, and she was reelected 3 times. She was always subject to particularly intense scrutiny: how she acted, how she dressed, was she too aggressive, too weak? Kathleen handled it all with grace and grit by focusing on the important work at hand, protecting the environment, and serving as a good public leader. But that doesn't mean it was easy. Kathleen has devoted her life to making the world a better place for all, as noted by current Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame board member Tia Nelson. Over Kathleen's lifetime of advocacy, she has led from a place of unwavering principle, dedication, and commitment to every person's basic right to breathe clean air, drink clean water, and enjoy Wisconsin's remarkable natural resources. So in final comments, those who know Kathleen well know that she has a passion for baseball. So it's fitting for me to conclude with a baseball analogy. Thank you, Kathleen, for bravely stepping up to the plate throughout your entire career. You hit home runs often, struck out a couple of times, but most impressive of all are the many times you took a swing and hit singles, doubles, and triples. Those hits led to you scoring many times, but as importantly, your strong, consistent batting led to many, many others scoring as well. Without a doubt, that is the most lasting and impactful way to make progress on environmental issues. It is also the true measure of a great leader. Thank you, Kathleen, for all you've done. Welcome to the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame. You certainly belong there.
Thank you, Christine. Now let me introduce you to our second speaker. The speaker is someone who needs no more introduction than for you to know that it is Kathleen's son, Eric Falk Phillips. Eric?
My name is Eric, and I'm Kathleen Falk's favorite and only child. Depending on the day, my mom goes back and forth on whether I broke the mold or whether I taught her a valuable lesson. Chris's words do a wonderful job of walking us through a lifetime of environmental and conservation accomplishment, from protecting waterways and shorelines to rural farms and communities threatened by sprawl, to my mom's work on behalf of any number of native Wisconsin wildlife populations. I can't tell you how many times people stop me on the street to tell me a story, whether it was when she was a 25-year-old lawyer or just last week, about a time that she helped them fight back against an opponent who usually had a lot of money and not a lot of concern about our planet. That work makes me really proud to be her son. I've been fortunate enough to witness a different dimension of my mom's conservation values. The three lessons I remember most growing up in my mom's house. Take care of the planet. It's the only one we've got, she'd remind me. Take care of the people who do the work. We're Irish immigrants, proud to come from bus drivers and secretaries, workers at the factory and corner store clerks. And the third lesson, take care of the people around us who have a little bit less. My mom didn't always have a lot growing up. To my mom, the conservation mindset didn't just apply to the globe. It didn't just apply to the planet. To my mom, it's never stopped at the tree line or in the air or on the lake. Caring about the planet requires us to care about people, too. It's the broader environment that we're all trying to leave a little better than we found it, she often reminds me. Caring about the world around you meant for my mom, for years she'd taken classmates of mine who didn't have a safe place to stay at night. It meant I got to know my way around Madison because she would take me to deliver Meals on Wheels to people who needed a hand from time to time. It meant her being a part of a Big Sisters program for years and years, paying for field trips, sports leagues, school lunches, for classmates of mine that didn't have any money. It meant buying Christmas presents for kids she didn't know, and holiday turkeys for moms she'd never meet. It meant marrying Peter Bach, Wisconsin's unofficial all-time greatest stepdad, and officially one of Wisconsin legislature's all-time great environmental leaders. Protecting the environment to my mom also meant enjoying it. She liked to lop off deer heads and shock fish, which I don't think a lot of my friends' moms like to do. Somehow she got me to believe that on a Saturday morning, going to the recycling center was the pinnacle of weekend fun. Decades later, I can't drive by a recycling center without seeing how they're doing things and checking out the operation. She taught me to hunt, Though truth be told, if my mom forgot her gun, she'd have just as good a time. She taught me that there's a reason it's called fishing and not catching. She's a baseball fan, but really I think my mom just likes being outside and keeping score. She's a gardener because she likes to be outside and get dirty, but really it's because she likes to give people her plants and flowers. Conservationism to my mom, in the broader sense, is about protecting shared resources and lifting up people who might need a hand from time to time, just like we all do. It's about respecting your opposition and finding common ground with people you don't like. It's about extending an arm when you win and learning a lesson and not complaining when you don't. Then there's the mom I've shared with the public for most of my life. My mom fought for drug diversion programs, against incarceration, and for mental health treatment at a time when it was not yet the progressive, cool thing to do, and when it was outright damaging to her political future. And she knew it. In my mom's eyes, you don't start a conservation club when you're a young kid in rural Wisconsin, or spend your summers in the mountains or volunteering, or your 20s in a dingy law office after graduating from law school and fighting for clean water for people you'd probably never meet. If you're not willing to fight the fights that matter, when they matter, and when you do have power. My mom doesn't like fanfare. She's actually sort of shy. She's built social skills because she knew she'd need them to make a difference, not because she likes hearing herself talk. That's not true for most people who have accomplished what she has politically. She gets that humility from her mother. My grandmother may not have known a lot about water rights or highway expansions or clean air regulation, but she knew how to treat people. She knew how to do the work that really mattered to people's lives. She knew that our goal should be to live lives that we're proud of, even when nobody's watching. My mom's conservation values did not come out of thin air, and I know my grandma would be proud of that today. Thank you all for giving my mom an honor she richly deserves, but is no doubt very embarrassed to claim for herself. Thank you, Mom, for teaching me that being a real conservationist means caring for the entire environment around us. Thanks.
On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame Foundation, we officially recognize Kathleen Falk as being inducted into the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame. The quote on the plaque to be posted on our website reads, "It is hard to create change, but entirely possible." That's a quote by Kathleen Falk. Congratulations, Kathleen. You are now a member of this exceptional group of conservation heroes in Wisconsin. We will now hear remarks from State Representative Katrina Shanklin, who will share a State of Wisconsin recognition.
Hi, I'm State Representative Katrina Shanklin with a citation of commendation from the state of Wisconsin. Know you by these presents. Whereas Kathleen Falk has been inspired by nature since her childhood in rural Waukesha County, where she started a conservation club for local kids in the 1950s, and she has dedicated her life to tirelessly advocating for conservation, the environment, and the underserved. And whereas Kathleen is a graduate of Stanford University and the University of Wisconsin Law School, after which she began her career as co-director and general counsel of Wisconsin's Environmental Decade, now Clean Wisconsin, litigating cases and winning groundbreaking decisions, including the seminal case on the state's environmental impact statement law. And whereas, as an assistant attorney general, for 14 years, Kathleen served as the state public intervener, one of the state's chief environmental watchdogs responsible for litigating and lobbying on an array of environmental policy areas. And she trained about 100 legal interns from the UW Law School. And whereas, Kathleen made Dane County history by becoming the first woman elected as Dane County executive, and she served from 1997 to 2011, becoming the county's longest-serving executive, during which time she made numerous outstanding and sustained contributions to conservation policy that have served as models for other communities, including the creation of the Dane County Conservation Fund, which has helped preserve over 10,000 acres of land. And Whereas some of Kathleen's other notable achievements and accolades include becoming the first woman in Wisconsin to run for governor on a major political party ticket in 2002, being appointed to President Obama's administration in 2013 as regional director for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services for the Great Lakes states, and leading the coordination of health services to assist citizens in Flint, Michigan, who were impacted by the drinking water crisis, and having the Falk Wells Natural Resource Area along the Sugar River named after her and her Chief of Staff, Toph Wells. And whereas her life's work has earned her recognition and awards from many statewide organizations, including Wisconsin Trout Unlimited, Gathering Waters Conservancy, Wisconsin Council on Children and Families, Wisconsin Parks and Recreation Association, Wisconsin Women in Government, River Alliance of Wisconsin, and the Wisconsin Idea Award. And she has mentored scores of environmental advocates, graduate students, pragmatic problem solvers, policymakers, leaders, and champions. And whereas Kathleen Falk has been named a 2022 inductee to the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame. Now, therefore, the members of the Wisconsin State Legislature, on the motion of Representative Katrina Shankland, do hereby honor Kathleen Falk for her outstanding service and commitment to conservation, and thank her for her inspiring and dedicated leadership.
Hello, we are now live with the ceremony. It is my great honor to be here with you today. Kathleen, you've been a tireless advocate for natural resources and people over your lifetime, and it seems to me that your conservation legacy lives in all of us at the intersection of natural and human worlds. You walk the talk of someone who deeply holds conservation values at heart, and through the model of the strong person you are, who is also a strong woman, you inspire us to step forward to and persevere like you have. Now it's your turn to join me in a live interview and share your story. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, Patty.
I understand you're calling in from Northeast Florida, where I understand the fishing and the bicycling are quote unquote darn good.
Yeah, the biking's easier than the fishing, I gotta tell you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I am so honored to have this opportunity to help everybody get to know you even better. I know that people know you quite well, but this is a real great chance to drill down a little deeper. And so I want to come out of the gate with this one, Kathleen, because Eric said it, right? So when I called you last fall to tell you that you are being inducted at that time into the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame, what first came to mind for you, especially in light of the fact that your son Eric talked about how you might be embarrassed to be recognized by this honor?
Yes, when you called, I thought you were calling to tell me that Arlen Christensen had been chosen, because I had been one of many to write a supportive letter, and I was so happy to hear you tell me that. And then you said, oh, but there's more. And then when you said me too, I was speechless and continue to be. I'm so grateful for my son's words. When he was growing up and I did this strange thing after many years of him watching me be a lawyer of running for office. He said to me, Mom, you've done a lot of dumb things in your life, but this is the dumbest. Politics is so mean, so ugly. Why do you want to do this? And I said, because if you want to change it, you got to run. And no whining allowed. And I'm just so proud of him because he has spent his life now being a change agent, driven by values to try to do something about it instead of whining. So I'm very proud of him.
It's easy to see why. I just want to mention to speak just a little bit louder. I know it's just a tad hard on my own ear here, just to make sure nobody misses your message today.
Okay.
So your story includes mention of being influenced by your neighbor, outdoor writer Mel Ellis. And I love that because my dad and I used to read his works. And I brought one of the books, The Land, Always the Land, from my own bookshelf. As I was prepping for this interview, I thought, I'm going to do some searching here and see what I can find that links to Kathleen Falk. And this book was published in 1997 by the Cabin Bookshelf in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And on page 114, Mel writes, quote, "Children come to the fields and forests with me in August. They think I am doing them a favor. How would they know it is I who have been favored? Through their eyes, I rediscover the freshly washed colors of a rainbow. They lead me down trails my boots know well, and I am surprised to discover how long it is since I paused to pick a pine cone, reach for a grass stem to chew, and put my cheek to the creamy bark of a young poplar to feel its smoothness." So Kathleen, were you one of those children who tramped in the fields and forests with Mel? And what do you remember about his influence on you as you grew up?
I was. My own parents and grandparents, my grandparents had been farmers in the Burlington area. And so, and my parents cared a lot about being outside. I could go along with my dad when he fished as long as I cleaned what we got. But we lived next door to Mel Ellis and his wonderful 5 daughters. On their spread, which was called Little Lakes. And we would just follow him around. Now, some people probably would describe this as lessons in stewardship from that great conservationist he was. But his daughter and I, my dear friend, who still is my dear friend, mostly saw it as chores he was teaching us how to do. Because it was a lot of land and a lot of wildlife to take care of and a lot of menagerie of animals. And so that's what I loved and grew up wanting to be a wildlife or a big animal veterinarian. And until later in high school at career night, a veterinarian said, "Girls don't do that."
Wow, interesting. And so we love the story. We love the story, the childhood story about how you started a conservation club for your friends in your rural Waukesha County neighborhood when you were about 9 years old. So we can't wait for you to tell us a little bit more. Maybe there are some children that will be watching this someday to be inspired too. Where did the idea come from? And what activities do you remember doing with your friends?
Well, there weren't activities to do that we didn't organize based on the land. There weren't shopping malls to go to and all that kind of stuff. And so the outdoors was our playground. And I wasn't a Girl Scout because we didn't have those, but I had seen that they had these things with sashes and badges for doing good things. And because we liked the outdoors, good things were picking up litter and saving a salamander. And so I created badges and we'd sew them on. And yeah, that was really weird to do back in the early 50s, especially for a girl, I suspect.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you still have any of that memorabilia just by freak chance? Wouldn't that be fun?
I do not, but I have great memories. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So tell us the story then about how you became an attorney and wanted to pursue environmental law.
So I was just so lucky to get a scholarship, a full ride to Stanford University, and that just completely changed my life. And when I graduated from college, this was right at the time of the Vietnam War and civil rights and women's rights and Watergate and this huge angst in our country. At the same time, we had the very first Earth Day that our own Senator Gaylord Nelson created for the country. And we sent the first person to the moon. And so there was this, for me, I love my country and I was angry at the decisions it was making. And so where do you go to try to get the skills to change that? I guess law school. And so that's what I did. And then, there weren't environmental laws courses really taught. And this was in the middle of the 70s. The environmental laws were just beginning. And so it is, I knocked on the door of what was then called Wisconsin's Environmental Decade, given that name by itself because they only thought it would take a decade to clean up the planet. And there Peter Anderson was laboring away for $35 a week. And I joined him in that effort and learned so much from him about how in a democracy we have all these opportunities to create change, but unless people do something about it and exercise those rights, the change doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. Democracy registers people who are intense enough that will do something about it. And so that's what I have tried to help people do, is to take what they care about, because almost all of us care, and figure out how you do the next thing to make a change happen.
And then what about the fact that this was an uncommon field for women, women attorneys at this particular time? And I understand you wore pants to the courtroom.
Yeah, so you know, there were very few women in the courtroom, as Christine mentioned. She was one of those. She's a trailblazer, a pioneer, a glass ceiling breaker in her own right on many levels. And then, as being one of the few women in the courtroom, there was even fewer lawyers doing environmental law. And so here I am trying to get judges and justices to declare something that no judge or justice has ever said before. So for the fact that I was also the only woman, that couldn't be, I couldn't let that be an issue. So I kind of dressed like a man, just to try to eliminate all the weirdness in the room. I've certainly had experiences of chauvinism in the courtroom and as an environmental lawyer, but nothing compared to when running for office goes. But I also knew that that was, if I could just not let that be a stumbling block, not let that trip me up in my own head. And plus, I didn't have any choice. It's just the way it was then. And so, as I told my son, no whining allowed. It's just the way it was. You got to go out and do what you think you need to do.
And so then how did it happen that you ran for public office, Kathleen? And what were the links then to conservation?
Well, as Christina said, after getting a call from the Attorney General then, Bronson LaFollette, to be one of the public interveners. Now, you know, that was when Peter Peschik, who was just this outstanding public intervener, responsible for so much environmental law in Wisconsin. When he left to go to private practice, there remained Tom Dawson, who argued and won a case in the U.S. Supreme Court for local governments to be able to regulate pesticides. I then joined him, and for the next 12 years was one of the two public interveners, helping citizens from all around the state. And that's when Governor Thompson abolished the office that Governor Warren Knowles had wonderfully created a half a century earlier for the public. I knew then I needed to figure out what I should be doing next to make a difference. And that's when people in Dane County, the 500,000 people there, said, why don't you run for county executive? That's the entity that decides a lot of where the development happens or doesn't, whether farmland's protected and trout streams and lakes and rivers. And given that Dane County was growing, the fastest growing in the state rapidly, we were going to lose those resources that we love. And then I would look at them and say, but I'm not the one, I'm the one outside the system making the system respond. I'm not the system myself. And I thank them kindly. And but in my private life, as Eric has mentioned, they were part of the lives of a lot of kids who didn't have what we had. And I just loved them and wanted to make a difference in their lives. And that's county government that decides whether you put money into human resources and drug and alcohol programs or build more jail beds. And so then I thought, well, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. So I ran for the first time in my life in a crowded field of men, 5 of whom were in political office, and won by a whopping 51 to 49%, Patty. You won as county executive in your county as a first woman. And then you know that all eyes are watching. How does she deal with the first tornado? How does she balance a first budget, et cetera, et cetera.
For sure.
But what I decided to do is I knew that the job of being the top CEO is different from the job of being public intervener or environmental lawyer. And that people had elected me in order to preserve this fabulous county of resources that we had. And so the very first thing I did was I called the head of the realtors. I called the head of the builders and I said, I'm not calling to gloat, just the opposite. I'm calling to ask you to give me a chance. We can either spend the next 4 years battling, I'm going to win some, you're going to win some, But meanwhile, Rome is burning and we're going to lose the county. And so will you give me a chance and work with me? And they said yes. And so then I had to figure out, what does that look like? Because both sides, we were entrenched, both sides. We were at war for a long time in our county. And I did some exercises, thanks to the brilliant Christine and my brilliant Tuck Wells, who is the brainchild behind all of the land and water conservation work we did. We crafted these scenarios, like we would open up one of the huge conference halls in the county and hundreds of people would come to debate land use. And one night we put a map of Dane County in the center of each of the round tables and a bowl of M&Ms. And I said, okay, let's put the M&Ms where you think on the map where you think development should happen. And the card-carrying environmentalist is sitting next to the card-carrying developer, and they're ready to go at it. And they found they were putting the M&Ms in the same spot.
How interesting.
And that kind of first breakthrough for people to see, at the end of the day, we wanted the same outcome, even though we had very different philosophies on how to get there. And that's when we crafted the conservation referendum that Christine mentioned, because I knew that was a shared value. But what was different is that I then said to both sides, you both got to go out together and sell this to the public. Right. And that was just an extraordinary request. And they did it. And then instead of just going back to their different camps after that, they said, okay, now what do you want us to do? And I want to just give them huge credit, because all those first and onlys and reforms that we did in the environment for the next 14 years are lasting, and I think they are all very proud of it, as they should.
Wow, that's a beautiful segue to the question I have here. It relates to Christine's presentation for you. Christine Euclid said that it was your precedent-setting work and your people-focused work that made a difference in your effectiveness and success as a conservationist, at least as I heard it. So what qualities of yours do you think have made the greatest difference in helping you be an effective leader in conservation?
Well, if you want the change to last, then people have to respect the outcome. And if they're not part of the process to get there, it's harder for them to respect. One thing people like again, Tuck Wells would say is that everybody's got something to offer. And if you search and listen hard enough, you'll find a common ground. And with that, you got to park what you disagree with in order to move forward on what you agree with. And people are reinforced by that success. Most of us want to be part of success and feel proud at the end of the day for what we have contributed. And so by rewarding and recognizing when people are willing to put aside how much they're differing in order to move a step forward, that's what it takes. And the public rewards me for that. They kept re-electing me instead of what I think a lot of politicians view their mode of operation as being, how can I most demonize the other side, as opposed to how can we get something done, because that's what we're elected to do.
Wonderful, inspirational. So what conservation accomplishments in your life are most memorable for you? What conservation accomplishments?
I can't go there. We do this together. I've been in local government, state government, and federal government. I've been on the private side. I've taught. We all the conservation gains we make is because we have people in all these places doing their thing, without which we would not make progress. So all of this teamwork, all of the people who sent in letters to nominate me that I had no idea they were doing, they are all my heroes, because we just are lockstep in our mission, recognizing that it takes all of us from our different corners to move the ball forward. And I am very grateful that the next generation, as I see it, is alive and well and smart and value driven and honest.
Right, for sure. Now, you and I have known each other for quite a while, like way back when I stopped in to see you in 2010, because I was the newly elected Portage County executive from the Stevens Point area. And you were the well-seasoned Dane County executive here in our state. And I was looking to you as a valuable connection and role model, because only 5 women in our state's history have held the elected role of county executive in any county, and that includes you and me. So others like me have been reaching out to you, I'm sure, over the years too. And I'm just wondering, what differences do you think that you have made as a role model, teammate, if you want to think of it that way too, and resource person over your career?
I hope that just by going out and doing it like you did, is that then others get courage to do that. I must have drove my son nuts as he was growing up, because I guess I would frequently say to myself when I was going off to do some new thing, why do I keep doing these things? Putting your neck out there, putting your name out there, when mostly I was terrified and scared all the time. And so one Christmas, he gives me this book for Christmas, and I look at the cover and it says, "Women Who Broke All the Rules." I go, huh? He goes, "It's the answer." And I said, "Well, the answer to what?" The question you're always asking yourself, why do you do these things? And what the book says is that, for all the glass ceilings for women, and as you have mentioned, Patty, and we've experienced it, because there wasn't a woman that already done these things, we look to the other women who were doing other things as first. So whether it's Geraldine Ferraro running for vice president, or Shirley Abramson being on the state Supreme Court, or my friend Pam being a doctor and writing a book, or my friend Pat starting an environmental group to save a river, or my friend Teresa running big political campaigns, if they could do something hard, then I could do this hard thing.
Yes.
And that's what I think other women see in me.
So there are only 14 other women who have been inducted into the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame thus far. So women including Emily Early, Ruth Hine, Pearl Pohl, Millie Zantow, Lori Otto, and Christine Thomas. And forgive me for all that I'm not mentioning here. So what do you say to other women who aspire to be leaders in non-traditional fields, such as natural resource related fields?
Well, you're going to bump your head on the ceiling, get up and keep going, because you can make a difference. And in some day soon, and I hope it's before Christine's granddaughter Cora is out there doing this stuff. I hope it's before then. But at some time that the playing field will be equal. And until then, you just get out and you do it. And I know they can, because as you have said, I get now to teach this next generation of change agents. And they are awesome. They're more courageous, they are smarter, and they are more skilled than I was. And so I get a dose of hope every day that not only are the glass ceilings going to get shattered faster than ever, but so are our natural resources going to be protected better than ever.
Lovely. So what would you say is your contribution to Wisconsin's conservation heritage? How would you sum that up, Kathleen? I realize it's a tough question.
I hope just by not giving up. So what I teach is that how do you change big systems is you first try to educate people. And sometimes that changes behavior. We read, we study, science drives our decisions. When it doesn't, then you organize people, all who care like you, because most of us care, to create power that you can then take to the legislative, the executive, the judicial branches, the 3 branches of government we have in our democracy, to get them to do their jobs. And once you're through that process, either won, but the other side probably isn't going to go to waste, so you got to stick at it, or you've lost, and because you care, you're not going to go away. And so just staying on that circle of change is what has caused us to be successful, and is what I hope I can help do, is just to keep at it.
So how would you want to pass along a message to young people today then? You were hinting at it, but let's hit it straight on. Those especially that aspire to be conservationists someday, Kathleen.
Because you can make a difference. Look at me, I'm from little rural Waukesha County. Everybody, we can all do this. We can all do this, and we all do it.
Yes. And, the quote on your plaque reads, "It's hard to create change, but entirely possible." So is there anything else you want to say about that possibility of creating change before we sum up, and we'll give you time for any other words you'd like to share today?
Yes, vision, think about what things were like 50 years ago, 100 years ago. Think of what things are now and what they should be in 50 years. And that kind of perspective of it wasn't easy back then, but look where we've come. It isn't easy now, but look where we're going to go. And so keeping your eye on the prize, your nose to the grindstone, and we'll do it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Is there anybody you would like to thank, or any other words you'd like to share before we need to say goodbye today?
No, I need to thank you and the Conservation Hall of Fame Foundation and all your team. That's such an honor, and I'm very thankful. I want to thank Mike Carlson of Gathering Waters and Mark Redston at Kathleen, Wisconsin, especially for organizing these wonderful letters that I did not know existed from all of my conservation heroes. Thank you all for all you do. And then I, of course, want to thank my family. I had two wonderful husbands that supported the paths I wanted to take. Peter Baca, who was an environmental legislator for 16 years and always got those top environmental awards for his work. And my son and my siblings. So thank you all.
It's a pleasure to share this time with you and to get you and have this opportunity for you to tell your story. And it will inspire us for a long time to come, Kathleen. I so appreciate this opportunity. We want to have you get out to go bicycling with friends and fishing with friends again. And so we're going to say farewell for today. And then finish the ceremony with everybody having the chance to send you some congratulatory messages and so on. All right. So what we're going to do, so Kathleen, feel free, turn your camera off. There you go. We are near the end of the ceremony now, and we are turning on the chat feature so that you can put your thoughts, your memories, your messages in there for Kathleen and her family. And we'll prepare a transcript of those comments so Kathleen won't miss the scroll of reading them here today. A recording of this event will be available on our website, the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame website, by the end of the week, so it can be viewed again and again to share the legacy of Kathleen Falk for decades to come. And we invite you to invite others who weren't able to join us here today to view that tribute online. If you'd like to make a donation to the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame in honor of Kathleen, you're very welcome to do that at our website, or for any other inductee for that matter, at the Join Donate tab. And then your donation will help us share accomplishments of Kathleen and other inductees with an even wider audience as we continue our mission of celebrating, advancing, and sharing Wisconsin's conservation legacy through the stories of conservation heroes. Again, we would like to thank our sponsors for this event. Our gold sponsor was Yeager Mellerock Family Charitable Trust, as well as Secura Insurance Companies. Silver sponsors included Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region, Tom Dawson, a donation in recognition of Wisconsin's youth conservation leaders, Gathering Waters, Northeast Wisconsin Land Trust, Jerry and Marilyn Knuth via Thrivent Choice, Wisconsin Society for Ornithology. Bronze level sponsors included Julia M. Boltz, Stephen Bourne, DeWitt Law Firm, Christine Euclid and Doug Steege, Joanne M. and Richard C. Hemp, Peter McKeever, Peter A. and Sharon A. Peshek, Sierra Club, Wisconsin chapter, Wildlife Society, Wisconsin chapter, Wisconsin Wildlife Federation, and an additional sponsorship just came in for Kathleen at the bronze level from Teresa Vilmain. And we weren't able to get it on the slide in time, so we wanted to recognize Teresa and thank her for her sponsorship as well. And then there were in-kind contributions, invaluable in-kind contributions from the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. So as you type your thoughts into the chat, I'll read just a few excerpts from some of the congratulations messages that we have received at our office. There's no time to read them all for sure. And then we'll end the ceremony by playing the video tribute twice through as you continue to share your thoughts. So some of these congratulations messages, oh my goodness, they're very fun to read. From Janet and Michael Brandt, congratulations, Kathleen. It's always very special to be recognized for passion, vision, and hard work. Congratulations on being recognized with your induction. You certainly earned it. Elizabeth Klusner says, congratulations on being inducted into the Wisconsin Conservation Hall of Fame. It is an honor that you so richly deserve, and I can only thank you for teaching me so much about how to be a good conservationist. More importantly, thanks for your mentorship and guidance on how to be a great human. Here's another one. This one comes from Pat Lawler. Kathleen Falk is awesome. From joining the cheerleading squad in high school in order to break open the cool girls' lock on those royal blue sweaters, to living in California for 3 years in a brother's rectory, to finishing a brief in her maternity hospital bed, Kathleen has always done the unexpected thing that always turned out to be the exact right thing to do. She has always kept the goal of a cleaner planet as her #1 goal throughout her varied career. Here's another one for you that puts an international spin on things, which is always important too. So this is an excerpt from Julia Bolt's accolades here. And Julia describes herself as a former intern and student. So she writes, as former interns and students can attest, a relationship with Kathleen doesn't simply end on the last day of an internship or class. Until this very day, Kathleen has continued to engage, educate, empower, inspire, and nurture me and literally thousands of others. Then she goes on to write, as a result of Kathleen's encouragement and mentoring, the seeds she planted and nurtured over the decades have taken root across not only Wisconsin, but the globe. Her influence has resulted in Africans building solar-powered generators and stoves, creating safer and cleaner water sources, and implementing healthier farming practices. Central Asians preserving sand dunes, changing irrigation techniques, and saving Himalayan cranes, and South Americans learning advocacy skills and fighting environmental injustices. Consequently, uncountable communities across the world are more sustainable, just, peaceful, equitable, and resilient, and more importantly, another generation of environmentally conscious citizens and activists has blossomed. This is an extraordinary legacy that Kathleen has helped orchestrate. That again was by Julia Boltz. We're going to leave it at that right now as we're at 7:07 p.m. and we're going to go ahead and watch that tribute to Kathleen Falk another couple times through. And thank you everyone for joining us today in conservation.